Welcome to the Small Church Podcast, where faith, community, and ministry intersect in the unique context of smaller congregations. I'm your host, Tony Marr, and I'm thrilled to be joined by two men who are convinced they're a little bit more talented than I am.
That is right. I'm Robert Kill, one of those supposedly more talented guys, co-host and fellow small church leader. Together, we're here to explore the challenges, triumphs, and inspiring stories within the tight-knit communities that make up our smaller churches.
And I'm Bruce Montgomery, one here to bring even more to the table than these two and offer a unique perspective to our conversation.
So whether you believe this talent hierarchy or not, you're in for a treat. If you're a pastor, a church member, or just curious about the world of leadership, you're in the right place.
Each episode, we dive into topics that matter to you, from innovative ministry ideas to navigating the unique dynamics of a smaller congregation.
So grab your cup of coffee, settle in, and let's journey together through the wonderful tapestry of small church life.
This is the Small Church Podcast.
Gentlemen, today is a big day. We have a big announcement to make here at the Small Church Podcast that we are coming up on 1 year of doing this show. And we have seen incredible growth out of this show, that it took off a lot quicker than we thought that it would. We have seen our audience expand far beyond where we thought that it would. Honestly, thought that we would be lucky to get more than ourselves and our spouses listening to this show. And we have hundreds and hundreds of people all over the globe that tune in every week, that wait anxiously, that get up at 6 a.m. on Tuesday morning to be the first to listen to our show. And what we've seen, a lot of the comments that come through, a lot of the things that we've seen over the course of the last year that we've been doing this show, is that we have people from all different walks of life that listen to our show. Some are small church pastors. Some are pastors of medium-sized and large-sized churches. Some are leaders in churches. And some people are not professional church clergy in any kind of way, that they just really like Bruce, and so they want to listen to what Bruce has to say each week and get a laugh out of the things that you and I kind of say back and forth. There, that would be our spouses,
and then some are our wives and our mothers. I was going to say that's
yeah. But
they have poor taste.
They do have poor taste, yeah, if that's true. But so big announcement, okay? It is after going through all of the data, all of the analytics, all the things of seeing of what's happening with the Small Church Podcast, that we are, drum roll, we are having a name change.
Oh,
we are having a name change. From this point on, from this moment forward, we will no longer be the Small Church Podcast.
We'll be
the Small Church Podcast.
Emphasis. Mm-hmm.
Emphasis on syllables makes all the difference.
Yeah. Because, we do have a lot of people that are not small church leaders, that are leaders in larger churches or medium-sized churches or baby churches. And so we felt that by calling ourselves the Small Church Podcast, that was limiting. And so we are no longer the Small Church Podcast. We are now the Small Church Podcast.
What happens if one day this thing it hits and we have 1 million subscribers and we're no longer the Small Church Podcast?
Well, now you just ruined it. Now we're just back to the Small Church Podcast. Forget it. The whole thing's off. Never mind. We're back to the Small Church Podcast. That name change, new rebranding was short-lived. And it's all over now. Way to go. You just ruined that whole bit there.
There's 8 billion people in the world. I think we could get 1 million of them to listen to us every week.
Well, the ones that we had have already tuned out for this week. They're done. Gentlemen, how are you doing today?
I'm good.
Welcome to the Small Church Podcast.
I am good. It's we talk about this and we feel like Northeast Tennessee weather-wise is unique. And yesterday it was
82 degrees yesterday.
And tonight it's snowing.
Yes.
And so,
82 degrees yesterday. Tomorrow's a high of like 42 or something.
We're 4 or 5 weeks into high school baseball season at my house. And everybody said, not just mine, just my kid.
Just your house.
It's like Bugs Bunny, Bugs Bunny at first, Bugs Bunny at second. It's only him playing all the positions. But high school baseball is about 5 weeks in here in Northeast Tennessee. And we've had days where it's like shorts and t-shirts out there. And then literally tomorrow night, we're going to be like, it's going to snow on us while we're playing baseball. And I'm just like, it's just crazy. So I love it. I love 4 seasons, but I thought we were past winter and kind of moving into spring.
Robert, one of the first really intimate moments that you and I had together was last baseball season when you shared your heater with me.
I did.
And we sat together, snuggled up under a blanket with a heater in front of us, freezing our tails off. My tail's still gone. It hasn't grown back. It was so cold that night.
It was rough. I remember a couple nights before that standing there and had a water bottle sitting on top of the bleachers, and it was probably a third full, and it froze while it started like ice chunks in it while we were standing there. And so, it was. We were standing around and standing next to the heater and started talking about somehow storytelling and that kind of stuff. And one thing led to another. And here we sit 12 months later hanging out.
Craziness.
All the time.
Craziness. Meanwhile, speaking of cold, if you want to defrost, all you have to do is be around Mookie Betts for a little while. Man, is that guy on fire. He is in fuego.
They were posting they posted something on Instagram yesterday, the breakdown of his swing, and Colby and I were talking about it. My youngest son who plays baseball, and we were just talking about it. He loves Mookie, but he's more of a Bryce Harper guy, which breaks my heart.
3 home runs last night.
3 home runs with a grand slam at the end to win 9-4, I think. So
I have Harper on my fantasy team, so that was pretty nice.
Yeah, I mean, so he, as a Braves fan, pulling for a Nationals and a Phillies guy over his entire career, I struggle. But man, Colby loves Bryce Harper, and he's a great player. Seems like a really good dude. So yeah, fun.
At the start of the Dodgers broadcast last night, as Mookie Betts was coming up for his first at bat in the bottom of the first inning, as we were playing that team from up north in Northern California, whose name shall not be said in this household. They said they used a graphic on the screen as Mookie came up that said Mookie Betts leads MLB in everything.
That's hilarious. You and I were talking the other day about baseball players and how they're playing multiple positions, and Mookie was really what started that conversation. And then you mentioned Tatis Jr. Did you see the graphic the other day that of the 8 starting positions in the field, 6 of them started at shortstop?
Yeah, for the Padres.
For the Padres, yeah. And that their catcher and the third baseman, I think, were the only 2 that have played those positions and only that position. But everybody else, the other 6 guys on the field, played shortstop at some point. And then, of course, one of them is still playing shortstop. But I thought that was crazy to think about. First base, all the outfielders, second baseman have all played shortstop at some point in time. And the game really is evolving, and it's I think it's a lot more fun to watch in the field because of it. And pitchers are pretty impressive in today's world. So
I'm sure that somewhere in this discussion there's an analogy. They say that art imitates life. The sports imitate church. That are we going to see a change in the church culture, in leadership culture, where we've talked a lot about the angles and being, having these 3 main things. Are we going to begin to see a change in the church world, the church landscape, where you need to be more flexible and adaptable and maneuverable in what you're doing within your church, and not being so segmented and focused on reaching one specific demographic?
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see that too, though, in the fact of that. I think in my opinion, one of the conversations inside of the church world has been, how do we not get spread so thin? So how do we not take on so many things? And so whether that is a lot of people listening to us are bivocational. So they've got a full-time job or a 3/4 time job that, Lowe's or, working for the city or whatever it is that they do. Then they have maybe no pay to a quarter of their pay that comes from, from their church and what they do vocationally there. And so I think that the whole thing has been, or have we gotten stretched too thin? Have we gotten, too many skill sets that keep us from doing one thing really well? Even if you're full-time at your church and you're kind of a really creative person, you love communicating and you love sitting with people. Well, those 3 things are all very much a time suck, and in a good ways. I don't mean that in a bad way. I actually am kind of talking about myself. Like, some of the things I struggle with are probably a couple of the more administrative things inside of the church world. And so, like, my favorite thing to do, I spent 4.5 hours yesterday day sitting with 3 or 4 different people, just sitting and talking about Jesus and working through scriptures and talking about just life and struggles. I'm a pretty creative guy, and so I can get deep in the weeds on what font looks best on a graphic, and I can lose an hour digging through fonts. And then I love to communicate, like just to read and consume and get content. And so when you have so many roles, especially like our original name title, Small Church, and you get so many things, it can really distract. And so I think there's a lot of good there. I think if you make, $32 million a year and all you have to do is get up and train for baseball, and you're freakishly athletic. So, I would say somebody who carries a lot of skill sets and you've got a lot of abilities inside of the church world, sometimes it just comes down to how do you balance that and be able just to go in, give it 8 full hours. He's also got guys like Freddie Freeman and Shohei and Outman. And I mean, you could go around that team is so loaded and so good. And he's got a lot of people who come alongside him that have just as much motivation as him. And that's one of the things Gary Vaynerchuk talks about is when you bring on volunteers or you hire somebody at your company to work, people always ask him, how do I get the people with me to be as inspired and motivated as I am? He said, you won't, and they shouldn't be. You own the company. And I'm going, okay, how do you bring people inside of a faith world, which is a little different because we don't own the company. We are responsible for stewarding it. And I'm just wondering, how do you bring people along that have the same buy-in because they care just as much and they want to invest just as much? And so I love that conversation, and I literally could spend the next hour talking about just that.
I think it's a great conversation to have.
Yeah.
And I think that it's especially relevant within a small church organization mindset. I really think that it's a great conversation to have. Bruce, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing fine. I'm trying to get some things going in my mind, how to work out some things that I want to do. Can you hear me?
It's better when you talk louder.
Okay. I'm doing well, but just kind of looking outside the weather, being depressed, and not really thinking about much else except that how muddy the lot next to my house is, and other things. You set me you set me thinking on your baseball theme, since I'm not coaching anymore. But I was thinking about how many preachers are right-hander and left-handers in terms of their delivery. Some leave the pulpit and go to the left side, some go to the right side, some stay put. And is there a better way to do that? And how long should they stay in a certain place, or should they pace? So I was trying to get to make some kind of application there for baseball, because I'm not coaching kids anymore.
Well, Bruce, you're the one who taught public speaking for 20 years. What is should you walk to the left of the stage or the right of the stage, or should you be ambidextrous there, or just park it and stay in the middle? What is, from the PhD himself, what is the appropriate best practice there?
Well, either way you go, if you stay put, you go left, you go right, anchor for a while, stay put. Don't just pace back and forth across the whole stage, because that gets everybody's necks sore from watching you do it. And they're actually looking for who's going to come in from the bullpen to take over for you when you mess up. There's such thing as too much movement. When you're speaking, you're not constantly on the move, walking in a circle, walking side by side. It's good to move because it refocuses people's attention, but it's not really good to pace back and forth. And so as I looked at that, when you look at a preacher, is he right-handed? Then he's going to probably gesture. I honestly seems to me, right-handers gesture move to the left, and left-handers move to the right, honestly, when they're speaking. And so if you're looking for a preacher who stays put, I heard a person once say, I just like to nail a preacher's shoes to the floor if they walk, if they move away from the pulpit. And I said, I just take my shoes off. and still keep going. There has to be some movement, or we're all going to get bored. But I'm just having fun with that. Anchor, don't always be moving. Look at the crowd, project to the crowd, and make what you have to say appropriate for the crowd. And we were talking beforehand, Tony, about a preacher who made a joke, and it wasn't a bad joke, but it got taken wrong, and everybody got angry about it. We're in a society right now. You have to watch what you say, or what you even didn't intend to say that somebody heard, and trying to communicate. But there's analogies to baseball and those things. But I've gotten old enough now, I've forgotten most of them.
So if you get nothing else from this episode of the show, anchor yourself to the floor. Mm-hmm. And Robert, you don't have a problem with that. You like to sit on a stool.
I do sit.
I always sat on a stool as well.
I like it. And then I stand up and I definitely go to the right batter's box, to the right-handed batter's box. I'm on the left side of the plate when I move. And I think it's because my right hand I'm dominant right hand. And so when I reach for my notes and I reach for things, I'm not as clumsy when I'm touching the iPad or trying to turn a page or something like that. So
gentlemen, this past weekend was Easter weekend. You both are actively working in a church right now. And I know that as I'm not, but did for almost 20 years, that was one of the most stressful and yet one of the most rewarding weekends of the year. And I can remember Sunday afternoon when you're done with Easter service, feeling this overwhelming sense of accomplishment, and yet also, also a sense of relief for that we made it through this. But now the real work comes, because you have your CEOs that showed up, and hopefully something that happened over the course of that morning or that weekend had an impact in that, you always see the big rush of people on Easter morning, but then hopefully you're going to see that you were able to present the gospel in some way, that you were able to have a connection with people to where there's going to be questions that are asked. There's going to be revisits that are going to come. And so a sense I can remember just the overwhelming sense of accomplishment, sense of relief, but also did we do it justice?
Yeah.
Did we do it justice? And where do we go from here in people's lives?
Yeah. Easter's a, it's such a beautiful day. Easter, Christmas, these 2 weeks out of the 52 that we get, that we sit in, that have so much meaning for our hope and our life as followers of Jesus. And it just really is a special day. But also, I'm 48. This was my 48th Easter. I mean, I have heard all the sermons, all the verses, all the things, and I don't walk in really going, man, I want to be super creative on Easter. I mean, I just don't sit in that lens. And so, I really enjoy those days. It's super special. It feels busy, but we try and do baptisms on Easter anytime we can. We had had one in each service this past week, which was really, really special. And I enjoy getting to worship and just spend time and sit in with my friends and really just reflect in. We take communion. I know Good Friday as well. We didn't have a Good Friday service this year. We encouraged everyone. My wife went and bought crackers and grape juice, and we encourage everyone to do communion and at home this year, to do that. Just kind of spend some time with your family, reflecting in. But yeah, I love communion and baptisms and just really those celebration moments of what Christ is doing as we celebrate, the big, this huge thing He did for us.
So now what? By the time that our listeners hear this episode, we'll be about a week removed from Christmas. So Christmas. Hopefully we're not that much of a tape.
We've got a lot of extra episodes I'm unaware of.
We'll be about a week removed from Easter circa 2024. Now what? So you've made it through. You're sitting a week out. What kind of follow-up needs to occur? What kind of interaction needs to take place? What's next? You've had people come to your church that maybe you haven't seen since December. Maybe you've never seen them. What's next? I was talking to one pastor yesterday and had a meeting with him and said, "How was your Easter?" And he said, "It was great." He said, "Attendance was huge. It was the largest we've had in a long time. Most of those people were family of other people in our church, but we did have a few people that we'd never seen before." And so now what? What's the follow-up now? What does your guys' process look like?
Bruce, do you want to talk about that? What you guys do?
We try to do it in a group kind of a way. When we do have that, we make an announcement. If you'd like to know more about us, come to this meeting after church next week, or do this so we can talk to you about it. We don't really take cards or get a lot of names at that moment in time. We wait and let people think about it, and if they really want to know more about us, we think we can do that. But we really are not that aggressive with if we get a visitor, we don't go out and get their card and suddenly go visit with them. I think that's a little aggressive for our society.
You don't fingerprint them?
And in our society right now, if you go to someone's home, you are almost look like an intruder, unless you're really close friends, because our society has lost the front porch. We've gone back to that bowling alone kind of mentality, Tony. We talked about a long time ago that I don't always know that I want to see somebody come to my door, even a friend, if I'm doing something that I really want to do and get interrupted. So we really kind of let people have 2 or 3 weeks to come, and if they want to then know more about us, they can ask, and we'll share with them. It doesn't mean we're not looking for and taking opportunities to share, but I think it's we're not as pushy as some churches are.
What are you guys doing, Robert?
Yeah, we do ask for cards. It's just our rhythm every week, though. And so it's just a way we get 2 or 3. The people who come in a lot of times, our church is, I'm going to say, different than a lot of churches in the way of a lot of times we lose a lot of people because of being a younger people my age, kind of that mid-late 40s, almost 50 type of range. We lose a lot of people that go to church with mama on Easter. And then we have a few that float in that maybe only come, 15, 20 times a year. And so, we see an increase just like everybody does. And I'm very thankful for that, but it's not, it's not like 100 or 120 extra people. One of our campuses had like 130 extra people, literally almost doubled their weekly attendance with it. And he said it was great and I loved it, but he's like, it's that many extra people. It's really hard to work through it. And so they'll move through it as well as they can. But we've got some pretty good processes. We use things like Planning Center and stuff that we're able to communicate pretty quickly with people and send some text. We're using Gloo, GLOO. And so if we get cell phone numbers and things, we can get people to text into a thread that lets them scan and text in and be a part, that we can have some, I know it feels impersonal, but some things that we've really thought through. One of our campus pastors actually records a specific message for every guest that signs up in that. So he'll go in and record a message that's a special message and load it in. And when it comes time for them to get that message, the one that goes out is something specifically from him to them with their names and stuff in it. And so, yeah, we use Planning Center, Gloo, and we try to email, text, phone call, when in that space, and just answer questions as best we can, especially for first-time guests or people that are trying to take some next steps.
That's great. Love it. All right, so we have not had an episode where we've just sat down with the 3 of us and talked for quite a while. We've had some great, incredible guests on our show over the course of the last month or so. But this is the first time that we've had an opportunity to just sit down and talk and reflect maybe back on some of these past few episodes that we've had, some of the guests that we've had, some of the conversations that have taken place, and ideas and thoughts that have been shared. So wanted to spend a few minutes with you guys and just kind of do that, kind of invite our listeners into a lot of what happens when the red light isn't on the soundboard in here, and we're recapping discussions that we've had with people, or we're sitting down at Cracker Barrel and talking through the different things that we've experienced over the last several weeks. So I want to just kind of open it up to the two of you guys and say, over the last month or so, with the different people from many different walks of life, many different areas, focuses in church leadership, what has left a lasting impression on you?
That's a lot. It feels like a loaded question, because there's a ton of stuff.
Here's the deal. I gave you guys these questions 2 days ago.
I have them
you
right here. I'm looking.
You knew this was happening.
Sorry, I wanted to be sure that we were diving into the people specifically, and it wasn't something crazy. Yeah, I think that, this is our second time talking with Justin Nava. And man, he's a great communicator. He's a fun dude, just really, really bright in a lot of areas with some things that I understand, but struggle with. As a part of a network, some of these things that he talks about, I have to find some ways to, like, how do I navigate this from my perspective, but as a collective group? So I just don't get to go in and make overarching changes to where he says, give people one option. Don't give them 4. Don't give them 14. Give them 1. Move them to the next step that makes the most sense to help them spiritually take a next step in their relationship with Jesus, and be connected to, your organization as a part of that process. So that's something that I'm still trying to process through. And I love when he talks about Facebook versus website, but I'm the world's worst social media person. So those are the challenges for me that I remember from him is, give people one action step, and, you've got to have a good website, because, it's like renting your home versus owning your home. When he talks about website versus Facebook, you're limited to Facebook of what they're willing to show in their algorithms and things. But then also, when you're using social media, how do you put the right content on there, which is what I struggle with.
Bruce, this was your first time on with Justin. What do you remember and take away from the episode that we had with him?
I remember talking about the value of website, but as an inspirational model. And I had not really thought about that. I had not thought, advertise, show what's going on, but it was meant to inspire, not really necessarily to inform. Did you get that from him?
Yeah, he talked a lot about the difference between inspiration and information. And if you guys remember, Bruce, you weren't there, but Robert, if you remember the first time we talked with him, he went on a long time about how your website is supposed to not be informational, but inspirational. And I kind of pushed back on him a little bit and said, as a family who visits a lot of different churches, has the opportunity to see, one of my biggest frustrations is when we go onto a church's website to find out when and where their services are, and nowhere on their website is there the basic information that we need. And if the website is that front door into your church, if it is the number one place that people are going to go to try to find information on your church, then basic information is pretty important. And I thought that it was interesting how this time in the conversation, he talked about the balance between information and inspiration, and how there did need to be critical information, that people are coming to your website for information. But in coming to your website for that information, they need to walk away with inspiration as well, that they come looking for information and they walk away with inspiration.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, in that space, like when you get to a site, you want people to click the right buttons that help you get the right information that allows you to collect what you need so that you can reach back out and you can keep people informed. And 6 months from now, you can send out an email that maybe they haven't landed somewhere, or maybe their family's in a really hard spot that they need a faith family to come around them. And They get that email or that text message or that card in the mail at just the right time. But then there's also, I mean, people aren't signing up for Netflix. I mean, we don't necessarily get the right to call and get their name, social security number, phone number, debit card information. We don't get to necessarily get all that information. They have the ability to just show up, walk in the door, and sit down. And so I think it's definitely needs that basic information of what's our address, what time do we meet, is there children's ministry in that hour, both those hours? How does this work?
Yeah, I actually just lived it this past weekend on, not with your church. You thought I was getting ready to throw you under the bus.
No,
here.
it wasn't me.
No. But Saturday, I get a text message from a friend of mine who is in Las Vegas, my hometown. And they say, hey, we're in Vegas for the week and we want to go to Easter service tomorrow. What was your church here? And I was like, oh yeah, you got to go to Central. Go to Central. And they say, okay, what time are services? They said, we're on the website. It looks like they have like 5 campuses. Which one do we go to? Which campus do we go to? What time is it? And so I quickly just hop on the computer. I'm sitting there, like I'm gonna find this out. I knew the address was 1001 New Beginnings Drive was the main campus, but I wasn't sure what their service times were now. And so I hop on and get onto, and I've just totally thrown Central under the bus. Not that anyone from Central is listening to the Small Church podcast, but because they're definitely not a small church.
No, they're pretty amazing though.
They are. But so I get onto their website and I can't find the information anywhere, but I get sucked into all the inspiration that they have. And I find myself watching this intro video from Judd and all these different clips that they have of things. And before I know it, I've now spent 15, 20 minutes on their website. I'm like, man, this is so cool. And then I realize, oh, wait, she's still waiting on me to get back to her on when and where the service is. And I haven't found that information. It took me 20 minutes on their site of getting distracted and detracted from what I was looking for before I could finally find the information. And it was buried deep into their website, what time their services were, where their locations were. You couldn't find where their main campus was, which I know they probably do intentionally. But if you wanted to know where is Judd going to be teaching live, you couldn't find that on their website. But it took a while for me to find. But in the midst of finding the information, I got so distracted with the inspiration that, it was an interesting observation there. I finally did get her the information that she needed, and I'm now reminded that I need to follow up and see how she liked the service.
Yeah, I mean, that's hard. You can get churches that large. I get what they're trying to do, but man, and I know they care. That would have sounded terrible. But I don't know that their greatest concern is if the person who's visiting Vegas one time that floats into their church that's going to fly back to some other part of the country or other part of the world and probably never walk through those doors again. I don't know if their greatest concern is making sure that they know when it is. But we were at a church. We were playing baseball against a Christian school, an apostolic church down in Knoxville area. And we got there and this building was just gorgeous and the fields and stuff. And so Melissa and I get like kind of on their website. We're just like, man, we'd love to know like just what's going on here and, what's their staff look like? And they're like, there's no staff anywhere. There's no pictures of anybody. There's no names. It's just like, you don't know anyone or any, it's just like, here's our basic stuff. Here's our beliefs. And here's when you can show up. And it was very informational.
Yeah, I will tell you, and I know that we've gone down a trail that we didn't intend on, but I can tell you that having been on staff at several churches in Las Vegas, that it was a conversation that we had amongst our leadership many, many times. And something that we experienced oftentimes is that people fly into Vegas for the weekend looking for a great time. Friday night doesn't go so well. Saturday really doesn't go so well. Now they're faced with, I'm going back home having just lost everything that I have on Sunday afternoon. I need to go get some hope and some inspiration in my life. And we had people that would say, oh, I've just blown my life up over the course of 48 hours. where can I find God in the last 12 that I have here before I board a plane to head back home and face the reality of what I've just done. And so I know that we had those conversations. We saw that countless times where people would come in broken at what they just found and getting ready to get on a plane later that evening, a red eye back to the East Coast. And so I do think that happens. It probably doesn't happen a lot here in East Tennessee, but in a city like that. So providing that information to where someone who is at the end of their rope and is saying, man, I really want to find a place. And you Google churches in Las Vegas, Central is going to be one of the first ones that's going to pop up. And so having that information readily available, I think is something that each church needs to address and evaluate.
It needs to be available, but you also have to have the inspirational part. The first step of assimilation is anticipation. People come into a town and they don't know where the churches are, so they want to find a resource, and they go to the internet, and a lot of it is just a feel. Like they look at the pictures of the building or the things they're promoting, and so it gives them some idea who you are before they ever get there. And then there's the encounter phase when they get to the church. It's if we don't back it up, with what we say we're going to be online, then people are going to be disappointed. And so there's several steps of people assimilating or joining or becoming a part of a congregation. And but number one, with people coming into town, you must have a good web page, because that's where they're going to look. They don't look at the yellow pages anymore to find, oh, here's the A's, this church here's here. It's like them, feels like them, feels like they would be happy with. And so they've got an anticipation before they ever get there, who you are and what you're going to be like. And then the next day, when they have the encounter phase, do you live up to that? And that's very important, that we don't over-anticipate ourselves or over-advertise ourselves. And then we have people come, and we're a real friendly church, and people come and nobody speaks to them. Or everybody's talking to their friends and don't break out of those conversations to meet anybody that's new. I like to see if I can grab people who are new and know they're new, and just introduce them to people in the church, because they're not going to do it, and sometimes people in the church are busy talking to each other, and so we try to make their first encounter with us as they come more positive, and maybe come away with somebody they thought could be a friend, or maybe we have a next door neighbor to somebody who gets involved with it. But it's got to be something, like you said, Tony. That does enthrall you, engage you, but you can't leave them there in the middle of the desert and let them find their way. If you do that, they'll get lost and leave.
Yeah, that's great. I know that we've had several of our listeners that have reached out to Justin and had consultations with him. If that's something that you would be interested in, again, his website is Nava Church Marketing. Want to give him another shout out. You can reach out to him. I know the first conversation, the introductory conversation with him and his group is completely free, and they will do a full evaluation of your church marketing and help you to best reach the community that you're trying to reach with the gospel. So yeah, great episode there with Justin. Let's move on to Ron Klassen's time that we had with him in his book, Maximize.
Yeah, I really enjoyed Ron, and I enjoyed all the three guys we're talking about today that were a part of this. I've enjoyed that conversation with all of them, but I have really, really thoroughly enjoyed reading Ron's book. I've enjoyed that conversation with him and kind of processing this. The thing he said that I don't think was in the book that just kind of stuck with me was praying through the church directory, which feels like something to do from like the 1960s, but it's really inspired me. And I'm not very good sometimes at printing things off. And so I've got to figure out how to print from Planning Center. Somebody here is going to message you and be like, Robert's an idiot. And I will be like, yes, I am. But yeah, I'm just working through some things like that. Just how do you kind of faithfully sit in that space as a leader that you can do. There was so much good stuff. I loved his conversation around imagine all the ages that are sitting there, and when you're addressing blank topic, how does each generation, each person apply that? And I thought that was really, really, really special. And then Bruce, this is something that is, I think, a great transition place from me to you. This is a conversation we have often, just privately, is intergenerational ministry, and just how do we connect the generations for the kingdom.
That's still a thing I'm working on with the church I serve right now, is working with seniors, but trying to keep them actively engaging with other people in the church and the intergenerational thing. And that's where your directory does come in, and you can get that and get that information. Now, the church we have is pretty large, but over half our attendance is senior citizens, and so we try to put some things in for families. We try to put some things in for grandparents. We try to find things that we can engage in, and the people who are coming are looking for. And sometimes we have to sit down with some of those folks and kind of ask questions of them, if they'll let us, to figure out what the best way to do with it, to respond is. And you can't do that without some contact. My PhD is in organizational and interpersonal communication. And one of the things I'm really big on in our society is touch. We're afraid to touch each other since COVID. Get away, you're a plague. Touch is not bad. And we do need. I do need, and other people do need touch. When you've got your little high school boy or little junior high kid who just struck out for the second time during the game, a kind of a hug when you get him in the dugout and encouragement is really going to go a long way. And instead of letting him sit at the end of the bench and mull over how bad he is, so the same way with church. When we were with people there,
Robert's sitting there thinking, my son doesn't strike.
Someone
never.
Someone who's I went off my own way, but someone who's older needs touch and needs help and encouragement, just as someone who's younger.
Yeah, definitely. For those of you that are listening online or on an app, our poll question for the day for this episode is going to be, does your church still have a church directory? And wherever you're at, you can vote on that through either our Facebook page or through whatever platform, Spotify, iHeart Music, iHeartRadio, Apple Music, whatever you're listening to. That poll question should be available on there. Take just a moment, as long as you're not driving, and answer that. We'd love to know your feedback. Does your church still have a church directory? Is it something that maybe is digital online, or is it something that is just obsolete and you don't have anymore? Well, I thought that Ron's ideas in Maximize were really, really brilliant. I thought that a lot of things that he had to say, a lot of the ideals that he presented to us were something that could help a church regardless of their size. I don't think that it was just specific to small churches. And so again, if you're listening to our show and you haven't picked up a copy of Maximize by Ron Klassen, you can find it on Amazon. I know that's where I bought my copy, was through Amazon. And so you can get it there. If you're a Prime member, it'll be to you in 2 days, and you can have it finished but before the weekend has even hit you.
I bought my copy off the corner of your desk.
All right. Yeah, it was free. You still have to pay for that thing.
I couldn't reach the copy on Robert's desk because we're not in the same place. What I find, though, with directory is directory, once you print one, it's out of date. And that's one of the problems that we have with it. And then, but if we thought we would do an online directory, and we do have a directory online, but a lot of our people don't want their names advertised or addresses or phone numbers, and so we find it difficult. I think a directory is good, and you can use it for many purposes. But I also think that you're going to find pushback on some people who don't want all the information out, and I don't know why they couldn't have that out. But a directory, I use it all the time. Our online directory, because I'm looking for people who need to engage or get do things. But yeah,
And I
so
think
for me, to answer that question, it's a double-edged sword. Yeah, I think we need a directory. Well, I don't know the answer to getting everybody to be as engaged with it as I am.
Yeah, I definitely don't. I was not advocating to go and do a photo day and have a church directory so much as that's the verbiage he used. And like, I'm not even sure that everybody, if you're a younger pastor, you may not even know. I mean, you may in context understand what a church directory is, but when Bruce is talking like addresses and stuff, I mean, it literally
Kids these days don't even know what a phone book is.
Get off my lawn. It was literally every person's picture. Their entire family would go in there and stand with them. It's mom and dad and all the kids, and all the names are listed below. And then in the back was literally your address and your phone number. And so if you wanted to reach out to that person, that you just stop by their house and go. And so I'm definitely using Planning Center. I'm going into our contacts and I'm printing a list from there. And I don't even know that I think I can choose to not print phone numbers and addresses and things like that. I'm just names, and being in a small church, I know vast majority of everyone on that list, and I'm just praying for them as I'm going through it. So it's a very different space.
So I remember there used to be companies that there were only a handful that they had the market cornered, that they would come in with their photographers and they would put together your church directory. And it was a big event. You would sign up for a time slot for your family to come in and sit under the lights and get your picture taken Olin Mills style. And then a few weeks later, you would get the spiral bound booklet that would come in, and it was exciting. And you'd look at your picture and you'd laugh and you'd look at everyone and see all of that. So I'm guessing there's not much of a market for those services anymore.
No, and I think too that I would say no, there's not much of a market, and I think that creativity has changed our access to resources. So what we all know is that I could go to Home Depot and get a couple of lights and hang them up, and if I really wanted to go all out for this, I can either get a cheap backdrop or use a white wall or something in my church, a wall that's a good color, stand people or sit people in front of it, take my cell phone, and because these pictures are 1 by 1, I mean, maybe 1 by 2. It's not much at all. And so you're talking like your cell phone in today's world is going to do so much more. And then you can really, from Canva or something like that, create your entire document for nothing. And so many people, I mean, now what it would cost to have somebody, like me and my wife that do professional photos that have all the studio equipment that can come in and set up strobes and all this stuff and do that. Like what it would cost for us to spend 3 days with you or 4 days with you, depending on the size of your church, and then me to spend the better part of a month getting everybody's name in and then sending it to you and you making corrections and sending it back, and then me making those edits and sending it back. I mean, it's thousands of dollars for all of that work, and for something that you can do for free, and your church secretary or your student pastor or somebody can knock it out in a few days.
Youth pastors all over the world are revolting against you.
That's okay. I are one. As Jeff Foxworthy says, I are one. So I've had those things thrown on me all the time.
All right. So enough talk about church directories. Pick up Ron's book, Maximize. Find it on Amazon. That'll be great. Let's move on to last week. We had a conversation with Terry Thompson. Loved this conversation with Terry. Had a couple follow-ups with Terry since we talked with him. And just a great guy. Lots of great information. He runs an organization called Small Church USA out of Indiana. And guys, what were your thoughts on our conversation with Terry and urgency and revitalization?
My favorite thing he said was the quote about leadership is about challenging your people at a rate they can absorb. and Larry somebody said that. I didn't get the last name when he said it, but I think that's just kind of the gist of that quote. But I loved that so much. Change is going to be coming. It's going to be happening so quickly. And how do we challenge our leaders and our friends and the people that are around us at a rate that they can absorb and not revolt? So, yeah,
Loved
that was it. Yeah.
Bruce, how about you? What were your thoughts from Terry?
I enjoyed his energy. I enjoyed his insights in terms of motivating people and engaging them and preparing them for change, because change is going to come whether you want it or not. And it's like those directories; they're going to change, be out of date real soon. But if you got a situation that doesn't look positive, he just find ways to engage people to become more positive about what change could be and what they need to do to examine it. And he included his leadership in the planning and in carrying things out is the way I heard him. And I was really engaged with his knowledge about communication and his enthusiasm.
Yeah, he's definitely a high energy guy. Yeah, a lot of adrenaline flowing through those veins in that guy.
You'd have to be jumping out of planes and doing the crazy stuff he does.
Yeah, I don't know how anybody does that.
That's insane.
What's the craziest thing that you've ever done? What's the most adrenaline-packed thing that you've ever done?
This is going to be a very low bar probably for most people, because I am not a risk taker whatsoever with these types of things. I want to say like standing at the edge of a 2-foot deck or something. I did one of those rides one time. I think it was at Six Flags Over Georgia, where they hook you into like a huge swing and they take you up. I don't know,
drop you
and just drop you, and you're just flying through. And I only did that because the place I was working at, one of the kids was like, Robert's too big of a wimp to do it. I'll do it if he will. And I knew that kid didn't want to do it. And I'm like, I can deal with 10 seconds of fear to get a lifetime of this kid, like literally just like out of his mind in my brain. So it was great. It was a lot of fun. And he had a blast too. We actually really bonded over that moment, but worked at a boys' home, and so he just, rough life, and he was there, and some of it self-inflicted, some of it family inflicted, and so we were just hanging out, and me and him and several of the guys and our house parents and all this stuff that were there, and it was just really fun place. That was it. What about you?
I used to do a lot in my younger days. Jumped off a lot of waterfalls, jumped off a lot of cliffs into lakes and oceans and stuff. Probably one of the craziest ones was jumped off an 80-foot waterfall into a pool in Maui, Hawaii. That the impact was so hard that it broke my flip flop, like literally split the bottom of my flip flop. And I was thinking, that's why they told you wear sandals as you're jumping off of this thing. That was pretty crazy. I still do a lot of single track mountain biking that love to get out on the trails and fly through mountains and dodging trees and rocks and roots and all of that. That's a lot of fun. But never done the skydiving thing, and that's not something that at this advanced age of mine that I think I would be interested in doing. Haven't done bungee jumping or anything like that. I've done some rappelling, done quite a bit of rappelling, rock climbing, but never jumped out of a airplane or helicopter with nothing attached to me. Bruce, how about you?
Well, you guys are daredevils. When I was younger, I did a lot of roller coasters and things like that. And I'm not young anymore, so excitement for me is to put Tabasco sauce on something and take a bite of it.
Hey, that's living on the edge right there. All right, guys. So we've had a great couple of weeks, and it's been nice to reflect on that. But now I want to talk about some stuff that's happening right here in the now, some things that are going on in our world at this very moment. So let's spend some time with headline news.
It's time for headline news, where Bruce, Robert, and Tony search the world over for the top headlines relevant to the Small Church podcast, and then talk about it. And now headline news.
What do we got today? Netflix
Netflix just came out with a new show. And
yes, I had to think for a second. We had a bunch, and I had to think for a second which one. Yeah, Netflix came out with a new show about Moses.
Yeah.
3-part. I mean, it's like almost 4 hours. A little over 4 hours.
Docudrama.
Yeah, it's kind of I wasn't expecting the docu part of it. When I turned it on, I was thinking that maybe it would be like a Chosen or His Only Son type of movie thing. And then you get into it a few seconds, and all of a sudden you get 3 different faiths, 3 different belief systems around scriptures and teachings
Christian,
and
Jewish,
Bible.
and Muslim.
Yep. And so it was, it wasn't bad. I enjoy that. I'm probably a little more critical once that part starts. If it's just a movie, I sometimes can deal with, like, I know what you were trying to do there. That was just stupid and didn't work out. Once you start talking theology, I probably get a little more like invested. In fairness, we started trying to watch it. I didn't realize it was out. We've been baseball takes a lot of time, and for our evenings when we typically Melissa and I watch a show, and they're long, they're really long. So we've only seen a third of it, but we will definitely finish it. And it wasn't bad. I like the acting part of it. It's a lot of legwork. It's a lot of mental Olympics to jump through all of the different belief systems around Scripture and Moses and what the Bible says versus what the Quran says versus how Jews believe it, how Christians believe it. And,
yeah, I honestly thought that it was interesting getting those different perspectives and some things that I, in full transparency, wasn't aware of. That the Quran had such different takes on some of the historical perspectives and accuracies that I've just grown up with, and obviously very familiar with the biblical story of Moses, but seeing some things that the way that the Islamic faith portrays it, or their take on what happened, I thought was really, really interesting. I was thrilled to see that the show, even as of last night, was the number 2 show on all of Netflix, which was pretty cool. I would love to know something that I've always wondered is why the story of Moses is traditional with Easter. You think that it's the traditional that the major networks, fight for who's going to play Charlton Heston and the 10 Commandments on Easter weekend. And it's just from my earliest childhood memories, it's a tradition that is played on Easter weekend. And
I mean, he's definitely,
and now Netflix releasing this show on Easter.
One, I would say the Charlton Heston thing and the 10 Commandments movie, it was really the only, and I'm loosely using decent Christian film for decades. Christian media was so bad for so long. Now I think that with the ease of creating content, there is a lot of bad media, and I think there's some really good steps with things like The Chosen. I think this is well produced, regardless of whether you think it's right, wrong, or indifferent. I mean, if you're listening to this and you're going, "Oh, well, Robert and Tony," Robert and Tony haven't said anything. The jury's still out for us on where this will really land when it's all over. But I think that, these types of things, like His Only Son was not a great movie, but the quality of it was so much better than what so many other faith organizations have tried to do. I'll even throw a huge shout out to the Hendricks brothers. Did I say their last name right? Facing the Giants and all those guys. I understand they were using people in their church, but the quality was a monstrous step forward from what had been happening in the 80s and 90s inside of a lot of creation. So yeah, I think that this is a big step.
Wouldn't you say that the biggest shift in that would have come with Mel Gibson?
20 years ago with The Passion?
Yeah.
Yeah. That would have, was that 03? 04? 02, 03, 04?
Yes. 03, I think we looked at a couple weeks ago when we were having this discussion.
And so, and we're getting ready to get a very old Jesus coming back to us. With Mel coming back to us here. So Jesus is going to age greatly, which I wasn't sure he would do. So there we go.
But I think that was really the big change in studios embracing faith-based films. And
Hollywood
now almost every major studio has a branch for faith-based films. And you're seeing, I mean, it's once a quarter you're having another major studio production coming out, a nationwide release of some sort of faith-based film.
Yeah. And then the Moses thing, I mean, you think about, I mean, what he wrote 6 plus some Psalms. I mean, he wrote a really good chunk of even the largeness of the Old Testament. He wrote a really good chunk of that. There's so much that parallels to the story of Jesus and then God's love for his people. I mean, we see that throughout as you continue into, Samuel and the Kings, the Chronicles, and the major minor prophets. But and that story of God's people and what he did, especially from Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, moving into Joshua there a little bit, which, he's such a big part of that Moses story as well. I just think it's just a really beautiful connection. And so I think there is a lot to say there from Moses and Jesus in that.
Bruce, have you had a chance to see that show?
I didn't see that show, but I've followed through with all of the episodes of Chosen that they've had out in the theaters and things, and I really like the story. I like the way they do the characters. They make you think about, maybe it really could be that Matthew was this way, or it gives you some ways to see it and see him as real people. But for the longest time, my favorite Christian movie was Chronicles of Narnia. The animation of C.S. Lewis's book, and I thought they did better than many things I've seen in other ways. And you talked about the 10 Commandments with Charlton Heston. I still remember Charlton standing on top of the mountain and with one hand pitching one of the 10 Commandments scrolls right down and hitting the golden calf. I just thought that was an amazing pitch, and wanted to see if he could be on my baseball team. But it was it's so unrealistic. Some of them were. This is what I'm saying is more realistic and more things I think we can identify with and identify to in terms of Chosen. And we've actually turned it into in church as they get through with the episodes and do things. We kind of follow up on those and use those as a discussion point on Sunday nights with some of our people who are interested in it, and to give thoughts about it. Is it accurate? Is it something you would have anticipated? And how did you see that? And it's engaged even a lot of our young adults at the church. They've really accepted Chosen as a way to engage and talk to other people and to each other. And so I think that I really, really do like what's happening now in Christian movies. I was unaware about the one you're talking about, and I will go back and take a look at it because basketball season is almost over. And,
Bruce, I'd forgotten. This definitely wasn't a path I intended on taking, or I'd have done a little more research. I had kind of just in my brain forgotten really quickly about the Chronicles of Narnia. And so Passion of the Christ came out in 2004 with Mel Gibson, and then in 2005 we got the first Narnia, and
which
they really
Disney really got behind, put a ton of money behind it, did a great job with it, but it didn't do as well as they had thought, and so they didn't finish. I think they were thinking it was going to be another Harry Potter or Chronicles, not Chronicles of Narnia, Lord of the Rings type thing, and was going to be a big. And so they did the first one, and then I think the second one came out on from a lower studio,
and the third one might. And I think they did 3, but
I don't think Disney had anything at all to do with the third one. If I'm remembering correctly,
you're probably right. So yeah, I mean, I think that all that's there, and then you've got so many other things like the Jesus Revolution, the Greg Laurie story, which again, there's always a ton of controversy around things like this of what lands, what did, what didn't. But I think this goes back a little bit to the conversation we had a couple months ago, wrapped around the Super Bowl, of the He Gets Us campaign. I think any time that believers get a chance, that followers of Jesus get a chance to engage conversation with culture based on whether good, bad, or indifferent media and things that people are consuming because it intrigues them, it's a win for the kingdom. If we are prepared and, kind of 1 Peter 3 stuff, prepared to give an answer for the hope that we have, if we are ready to step into that. I think that was Bruce. And so either that or we have just been gonged off of the show.
We are running out of time.
So that might be a good way to end it. So
we are running out of time. I do have a church sign that I saw over the course of the weekend from a local church here in the area that was very Easter specific. And because we're running short on time, I'm not even going to play our signs segment music. I'm just going to give you guys this sign that I thought, and then we're going to wrap things up for the day. This sign said, "The Bee Gees aren't the only ones staying alive." Oh, that's good. That is good right there. Makes me want to go to that church. Let me tell you. All right. Well, that is all the time that we have today on the Small Church Podcast. I want to thank you guys for bearing with us as we revisited some of our past guests, some of the past episodes that we've had, shared some thoughts that we had on those. It was exciting to do that. Also, great to talk through Easter and what all that means. We would love to hear your thoughts on our show today. Get any thoughts, ideas that you have for future episodes of the Small Church Podcast or the Small Church Podcast, however you choose to refer to it. We do want to thank you for listening and remind you to subscribe to the show wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Join our conversation by finding us on Facebook or our website at higherministries.com. Share our podcast with your friends. We would love to have more people listening and being a part of this community. And until we talk again next week, I want to say thank you once again. Subscribe, like, follow, listen, and share. On behalf of Bruce Montgomery and Robert Kell, I'm Tony Marr. Have a great rest of your week.